Greetings, fellow Empyreans. I am Ashtrothy, and this is the Eve Universe show's continued coverage of the CSM 17 with Mifune. How's it going, sir?
It's going great. Definitely going great.
Not sure if you need a introduction, as it were, but Mifune, you work for the Imperium News Network. You run
I do.
Theta Thursday? Is that
Yes, so it's actually a very collaborative effort between me, Don, and Greg. A lot of it actually started because I had just joined the INN network as a commentator during Vietnam. Um, they needed people for camera work and for people that could sit there and watch an Eve battle for more than an hour without falling asleep. So I volunteered for that, and we were in Theta comms at one point, and Don had this crazy idea to bring Theta comms to like the big screen, and I've worked with behind the scenes Twitch streams enough to know how to do that, and so we kind of collaborated, and then we brought Greg on, and Greg, I handle a lot of the technical side of it, all of the OBS work, the graphical work. I do all of that. Dawn specializes in our topics for the week, what's been going on in EVE Online. And then Greg handles all of our people, he gets our special guest on for the week. He deals with all that fun stuff. So it's very much a collaborative effort between the three of us.
you said you do the graphics? You did like the Theta Thursday logo and stuff?
Yes. So what's very funny is the our current running logo is a neon sign,
Yeah.
and I had never worked in After Effects before, so it was my first time using After Effects, and I spent a whole ass week making that neon sign. And what's hilarious was my computer at the time could not handle the render previews of it, so every little tweak I made, I had to render the entire animation out that took like 4 hours, watch the MP4, and if anything was incorrect, then I would have to go back, re-edit, re-render it out. It was a painful process.
As a person that has worked in Blender and done video editing and all that stuff, like, I feel you. I feel you.
Not having that the ability to handle the render preview it's not it's definitely not fun.
Right. But we're not running for the CSM to be on Theta Thursday. You're running to be able
No.
to be on the Council of Stellar Management to help guide the direction of EVE Online. So I guess we'll just start with what drives you. I mean, you already have a good platform. You already have plenty of things to do. What drives you to want to be on the CSM?
So I have a very, very deep love for Eve. I always have. I take pride in the fact that I'm an Eve player of lineage. So my father has played Eve since 2006. We have flown together since 2016. And it was very much in the beginning a bonding activity between me and my father. And then it just grew into my love for the game and my love for the community. And the biggest reasons I've wanted to run for CSM is to help the community grow in ways that we either never thought of or just to grow it into the game we all want it to be. Especially with Hilmar and CCP out there screaming EVE Online forever. Well, that is possible.
Right.
The sky's the limit to bringing EVE forever. You just got to go about it the right way.
Right. A big key to making EVE forever would be to make it generational, right? Is that
Exactly.
So are you just another block candidate?
So it may seem like that in many different ways, but as far as I know right now, I'm not actually running under the Goon Swarm ballot. Like, I'm not on the Imperium's list of people that everybody's going to vote for. I'm sort of running outside of that.
But doesn't that just make you a block candidate that's not going to get votes?
I mean, I don't see myself as a block candidate because while I advocate for my block and I advocate for the people in my block, I have plans that are not just for nullsec players or just for Goon Swarm's agenda. I don't have an agenda. I don't plan to have an agenda. I just want to help in the ways that I know, in the areas that I'm strong in, and I want to be able to contribute that to the CSM and to the EVE Online community.
All right, well then tell me a little bit about that. What are your dreams outside of just the standard block thing? What are the goals for being on the CSM?
So one of the things, and it's something I haven't really gotten the chance to talk about often so far through the campaigning period, is tools for content creators. So as we all know, we have many, many different EVE Online streamers, many different EVE Online YouTubers out there that do a ton of great work. And I want to be able to help them expand those tools with CCP. Right, we saw the creation of the partnership program recently over the past 2 or 3 years that is shaped to help those people, and I really feel like there's a lot more we could do for those people. Things like cinematic cameras, or being able to create our own cinematic shots outside of the actual Tranquility. Just one of the spitball examples I like to give is the ability to create shots within Singularity, giving content creators the tool of Jessica from CCP. And if people don't know what that is, Jessica is the internal CCP tool that they use to create a lot of the trailers. Things like the Phoenix Quadrant 4 trailer were built in a tool called Jessica, and it's their internal tool. It's very much like Adobe Premiere Pro or Blender, right? It's very much along the same lines, except it helps CCP take their own assets and build those cinematic shots. And that's one of the things that I wish we could have a tool like Jessica to give to something like the YouTubers of EVE Online to create those beautiful shots we all want.
What I've really wanted all this time is like we can extract models, right? Like we have all the models for all the ships.
Oh yeah.
We have people have even figured out how to skin them correctly, so I can drop them into Blender or Unity or whatever and work with them, but not our character avatars. That is a difficult ask. I would like to see us be able to. I mean, like they're also working on Unreal. It would make total sense for them to introduce a plugin that would allow us to export things from EVE Online to Unreal.
Exactly, and then one of the envisions for Theta Thursday that I actually had was taking the pulse bar from the pulse videos that CCP has, recreating it, and then having all of our characters sitting at the round table, like for a talk show, for an EVE talk show. That sounds fucking cool, right?
Yeah.
And I wish we had the tools to enable us to do stuff like that. And so that's one of the things I want to work with CCP with to get done. Another thing is the same tools that the devs have to sit in a system and be invisible and talk to players in the local chat and stuff like that. I want to bring similar tools to cameramen. Because one of the things I noticed being a cameraman for the Imperium News Network is I would go to the fight of M2 and I would sit there in my cloak de stero on my camera alt watching the battle. Moving my camera was practically impossible because the level of tie-dye and the level of server stabilization was so bad that moving my camera would crash my client. Right? Let alone the fact that 8,000 players, I am bound to be decloaked and killed. And there were plenty of times during the war where my cameraman was indeed uncloaked and then murdered by people. And I feel like it would be a really, really great thing to give content creators the tools to make stuff like that happen without having that kind of worry or having that thing to worry about where to place the camera and stuff.
So like the ISD have a Polaris frigate that has extra capabilities. And on the other side of things, we have sort of recently gotten the flag ships, the flag cruisers, I think it is called.
Yes, the monitor.
Yeah.
Which is an FC thing.
Right. It's a very explicit, right? Like it removes all of your other capabilities because FCs need to be able to stay on the field, right?
Exactly.
So you think that we should have something like that?
I feel like we should have something like that. A ship that doesn't do anything, that has that kind of monitor tanking, right? It doesn't do anything. You can't lock any targets. You can't do anything, and you have to sit there, right? And a lot of people, the first thing that comes to mind is abuse potential, the potential that somebody else will use that ship, and that's where I feel like it should be very much a one-on-one thing with the developers, right? As it currently stands, we do have tools similar to that. I know that CCP likes to work with a lot of content creators through the partnership Discord, and if I wanted to, I could contact CCP and they could help me the best they can to do something like create a cinematic shot, that I have in my head. And I feel like it could work along the same lines as that. Fill out a form, tell CCP, hey, there's this huge battle. I'm a cameraman. I'm streaming for 1,000 people right now. It could really be helpful to have something that can lock me in for that cameraman.
Right. Well, there is the tactical camera, so that way you can completely divorce your location.
And the tactical camera and the in-game tools that we have is something that is very it is very powerful, but there is more powerful tools that we can put into play there to make things like, yes, the tactical overlay is very well, but if I'm in a 5,000 person mega battle between huge nullsec blocks or something, and let's say there's a Titan way over the left that just jumped onto the field, and the cameraman wants to pan over to that Titan, they can't do that because it's so laggy and so bad that it's just going to crash the client or worse,
Right, but a specialty ship isn't going to fix that.
I don't think a specialty ship will fix that very specific problem, but I feel like it can definitely help, because then you can get the kind of on-grid positioning you need so that you don't have that kind of problem.
Okay.
So you can sit right at the edge of the grid, 10,000 kilometers off, and still be able to zoom into certain ships, still be able to get those shots that you need without risking getting your ship blown up for, because somebody wants to kill you.
Right. Yeah, I feel you. What would you say to people that, I mean, I can hear it already, people saying these aren't things that the CSM are for. Like,
no,
this isn't what we would expect our CSM to advocate for. You're not talking to those teams. Like, what does this have anything to do with the CSM?
So it's just a small piece of the pie of the many things that I advocate for this year, and a lot like the rest of the CSM 17 candidates, I do advocate for a lot of the changes that are being made for the direction that the game is currently going in, the good direction that the game is going to go into. I feel like after FanFest, they do have a very diverse, very good set roadmap here that can be shaped, and I definitely advocate for it, but there are those tiny things like the streamer stuff on the side that I advocate for specifically to be a little more unique in the diversity of this year's CSM.
Yeah, and I actually do want to double down on the need for this, because there are a lot of considerations that content creators have that wouldn't be that difficult to address. And we have attempted to communicate it with CCP in the past, and they've showed interest in it, but we just haven't had it happen. And so it'd be nice to have an advocate that sits there and continually reminds them about things like, we want to be able to have a streamer mode that doesn't show our location in the middle of our screen every time we warp, these kinds of, like, the fact that streamers have to like block 90% of their screen just to be able to
Tell me about it. Like, look at Bjorn B, right? Like how much of his screen percentage just he has to block just to prevent, every bit of intel from leaking,
Right. And we're here to sell the game, and yet we can't even like show the best parts of it.
Yeah, exactly. And another big thing along the streaming path that I'm advocating for is Twitch drops. And we've said it I believe it was literally the day that CCP came out with the partnership program, and it was the first 25 of us that were in that Discord with CCP. I believe it was Rain who immediately brought up the idea of Twitch drops, and CCP was like, we'll look into it a little more down the road. And it's something that I wanted to push because I think it could be a very fun thing for content creators. It's a very fun thing for viewers, and it's a very, very good thing for EVE as a whole because it gets more people to watch the EVE Online category on Twitch. More people that watch the EVE Online category, the higher it gets on the Twitch list, the more new people get interested into the game. So there's just that underlying domino effect of goodness that can come from various tools that they can give us. And for
Right.
those in the chat who may not know what Twitch drops are, is basically you connect your Twitch account with your gaming account, and then just by doing nothing but watching streams, all you gotta do is watch EVE Online content. And at random intervals, you will receive in-game rewards.
Yeah, so think
The
about like
the
the CCP channel, right? You earn
the
points.
Gallnet
Yeah, the
the
Gauntlet skins.
Gallnet skin, right? It could be so easy because they won't even have to do the channel points anymore. It'll just be given to you automatically in your redeem queue just for watching, right? And could you imagine if we had so many EVE Online streamers and like you could have stuff like they could streamers can flag for a random ship from one of their hangars gets given to you just by watching their stream, or skins, or God forbid skill injectors and Plex. Like it would be a great tool to get people engaged in the EVE Online category. And one of the things that I was addressing a question on my CSM thread at some point, where the sky is the limit. The most amount of concurrent Twitch viewers that EVE Online has ever had is about 6.5 thousand, right? They're, out of the what, 35 to 60,000 players that we've ever had in EVE Online, and only 6,000 have ever watched Twitch streams concurrently. So the sky is the limit there of how many people can get engaged with EVE Online content while not actually playing the game, or watch some of their favorite personalities play the game.
So I'm kind of a bit confused. You sound like you are very positive about the direction that the game is going in, and like the things that have been announced. How I was under the impression that most of the people from your neck of the woods was rather upset at the moment. Is that
So the thing is I like to steal this phrase from Brisker Ball. I am very cautiously optimistic. I like to stay positive and not think about the game is dying, the game is dead, because our biggest thing is, yeah, people quit, and people quit in droves, and that is certainly a problem. But how many threads do you see on the EVE Online subreddit when a new player comes in and goes, should I even try this game? Because everyone is so negative. Like,
right?
should I even? And it's like, yes, you should.
I'm
Please.
I'm always
Like,
worried about the 100 people that don't even get to the point of asking that question, though.
I know,
That just look
because
around and go, "Oh my god!"
obviously things that have been going on for the past 2 years with the industry changes, the Rotati administration, that is definitely an issue. But as someone who likes to sit in front of a camera and someone who creates content for this game, if I have a new player come into my Twitch chat, I'm going to 100% say download this game now, play it. I'm not going to be like, "Oh, turn away, go play World of Warcraft because this game is fucking garbage." I'm not. I like to keep that positive attitude, and while I am concerned for a lot of the changes that have been happening, I'm not going to say that at face value, especially to new players.
Right. Well, that's good. But so I guess again, bring this back to CSM, right? Like, how does this relate to your need to be on the CSM? These are coveted positions. And of course, no matter what, if you get elected, voted on by the Imperium or not, you're going to just be considered another Imperium. Like the Imperium are going to call it as a mark on their a notch on their belt either way. So like, why should we give the Imperium another slot just to let you be on it?
I would say because I do have a lot to bring to the table, a lot more than people may think. Um,
Show me what do you
this
got? Like
is
what
so.
do you have?
This is something that I'm not really. I haven't been vocal about it in the past, but during the campaigning, excuse me, during the campaigning period, I do want to bring it to the table. So, little bit of history. When I was 16, I used to code cheats for games. I used to make cheats for Counter-Strike Global Offensive. I used to make cheats for Fortnite. That was my money making instead of a part-time job. Um,
What kind
and
of
with
sheet? Like a
that,
bot
yes,
or okay,
well,
or
yes,
like
like things
wall
like
hacks?
aimbots, like wall hacks,
Okay,
like that whole thing. I
the
was a
whole
script kiddie,
got it.
a whole scope. So the thing is that I quit that life when I turned 18, and I had gotten a manager job at a movie theater, and that's where I kind of left that life behind. But with that life, I have a lot of friends in that hacking community. And it was at the beginning of this year of 2022 that an old buddy approached me and said, "Hey, I know you play Eve, right?" And I'm like, "Yes." And he goes, "Well, I have something for you. I have the source code to almost every Eve Online bot in existence. Code that I will not release publicly, but code that I have brought to CCP in private through a couple of emails, a couple of support tickets. I have brought CCP those source codes and the ability to remove those bots from the playing field. The unfortunate part is that it has not fallen into the correct hands at CCP. It's mostly fallen onto deaf ears. And hopefully, with the CSM this year, even if I'm not elected, I still make it my goal to put that code into the right hands to make it possible to get rid of the botting problem that we do have.
I feel like that's a pretty big ask. You basically, as I just interpreted it, you said, "Well, I used to be a hacker that built cheats, but now I don't do it anymore. But I have secret information that I want to get into the right hands, and I need to be in the CSM to do it. I can't show you it, but trust me,
I can't.
I need to get elected so that way I can
Unfortunately,
show it to people."
no, unfortunately, I can't show it because showing it
Well, yeah,
can,
I'm just
well,
saying.
showing it, first of all, can result in a ban, so I'm not
Absolutely.
going
Well,
to do that
it's
for
just a
that reason
really
alone.
weird reason to
It's a
elect you.
really it's a really niche thing, and that's just kind of my thing. Is I do have a lot of niche problems, and it may seem like I'm just a generalized candidate, and that's the honest truth. I may not have a super specialty like Brisk does with words, like Benjamin has with ecosystem. I am a generalized person with a dabble in a little bit of all things, a little bit of voice in all things, and there's just many, many problems that I may not specialize in, but I can contribute towards.
So anytime that there is like a public figure, quote unquote, like one of us that gets a that runs for CSM, there's always that question of, is this necessary? I go back to the idea that like there's only so many seats. You as a you having your own show and all that stuff, you can provide your feedback. CCP already knows how you feel about a lot of things. Um, there's always been kind of this concern about people being, getting in on their fame rather than getting in on their effectiveness as a CSM person. Um, can you help me believe that that you're not falling into that trap, that you actually have a legitimate need to be on the CSM that you can't get by just the social connections that you already have?
Right. So the thing is that when I decided to run, I'm not one of those people that's going to come out and say I need to be on the CSM. And that is a very hard thing to say for a lot of people. I don't need to be. I'm running because I would like to contribute in the ways that I can. And while that may not be a lot, while it may not set me apart from other candidates, because there are tons of candidates that are obviously better. There's Casnir, there's Angry Mustache, there was Villy, there was Kenneth Field, right? There's a lot of people that are a lot better than I am, right? But I want to run because of my passion for the game, because I want to contribute, because I want to help, right?
Right.
And there isn't one thing that sets me apart from other candidates or from other people, but that doesn't mean that the seat on the CSM with those limited seats, that doesn't mean that it's wasted,
Right.
you know?
Well,
Because someone needs to do it, right? You know,
right.
it can't just be, it just can't be an empty seat. You can't just have any random guy on the CSM. And I mean, I'm kind of a random guy that would be on the CSM, but there's a lot of people that will run for the CSM for a very, very specific thing, for a very, very specific agenda, or as I like to call it, their version of Eve when it's not their place to do that, right? Like they aren't Hilmar, they aren't the leader of CCP. There are people who will go to the CSM and walk in like they own the place, and that's not me.
Do you feel like the CSM has been doing a good job?
I think they have. They have, and a lot of people will scrutinize with the CSM over the past couple of years over the industry changes and all that, but a lot of people don't realize that's not the CSM's fault because CCP never consulted the CSM on those issues. You know, like the whole resource distribution came out, everybody went apeshit, and all of the CSM came out with, well, we didn't know. They didn't tell us about this at the
Right.
summit. You know, when the Retriever pack came out for selling, CSM was like, they did not tell us a word about this. We don't know what's going on, right? I feel like the CSM has been doing the best that they can do to help and to be what they're supposed to be in that focus group. But if CCP is not going to utilize that focus group, then you can't blame the focus group.
So if you feel like CCP is not utilizing the focus group, why do you want to be on it?
Because I want to change that. We are
How are
we're
you
the
going to change that by being on it? Doesn't everybody on the CSM want to make that happen?
I mean, that's the thing. You know, the only thing you can do is go to CCP and say, hey, you need to listen to us. You need to trust us. You know, and as much as we just have to scream it from the high heavens until they listen.
Yeah. Well, I mean, trust in the CSM have waxed and waned over time. You know, there was a big buildup towards trust, but then there was a period of time where the CSM proved that trust was unfounded. Now that was a few years ago now. But you know, I can definitely understand why there's a certain amount of gun shyness, especially within, because like each block, each group within CCP, it's not a monolith, gets to decide how much they do or don't want to engage with the CSM. So if you know people are gun shy, then they're gun shy. How would you change that?
Uh, there seems to be, at least from the outside looking in, there seems to be a very disconnect between the CCP groups in general. They don't. A lot of times, it doesn't seem like they're quite on the same page. You know,
Right.
a good example is like the day the Omega price change was announced, and that same day the marketing team puts out a message saying there's a 33% discount on Omega. Like it seems like it's like, shouldn't you have that communication between the business people deciding the price change and the marketing people who decides what goes on sale when?
You don't think that those were
You know,
intentionally related?
I don't think they were. I don't think they were. And there's a track record that shows that like the marketing team, they don't talk to the game developers, they don't talk to Burger, they don't talk to Aurora, they don't talk to each other. They just kind of do their own thing.
Right.
you know? And I feel like that the CSM can be sort of a voice to say, we should do this. Like you said, if there's certain departments in CCP that don't want to talk to the CSM, then they don't have to. That should be changed, right? Because that's the whole point of the CSM, is to be that focus group. So I think all departments within CCP need to have conversations with the CSM on a constant basis.
Yeah, I thought even Paragon stated that like there were a lot of sales during that time period to help out, like the people that were already there pre-transition could like load up their stuff, get their, they did, that wasn't the only sale during that time. So I find it odd. I just find it odd that you think that that was like an accident.
To me, it felt like an accident. Like, it feels like and if it was intentional, then it's kind of ironic. 33% increase in price in the same day you release a sale for 33%. That's just like,
that's what makes it not look like an accident. It's one of those,
it's like, damn, that kind of doesn't feel right,
I mean, fair enough. It does feel like they're rubbing salt in the wound, for sure.
Right. And then it definitely, like, there's disconnects in other parts of CCP. The Game Masters is a perfect example. When people go to make a support ticket and you can ask a question to the Game Masters and they'll give you one answer, and then you can ask the same question and a different Game Master will give you a different answer. There was that whole debacle during the war about the bubble wrapping of Keep Stars, because up until that point, we as players understood that you could not have 100 warp disruption bubbles on one grid because it would crash Tranquility and fuck over the node. Because somebody did that in LowSec many years ago, where they just anchored 100 mobile small warp disruptor bubbles on a gate, and their clients would crash because they couldn't load the grid.
I think it was cans. Right? You can't anchor more.
Was it cans? Yeah,
or anchor bubbles.
It was along those. Yeah, but
yeah, and then you're right.
Right, and then I got the pleasure of meeting Ice Cream in Vegas last year, and Ice Cream even talked about like how different game masters will give different like answers to the same question, and it's like, doesn't that feel kind of weird? Because they're game masters, they define the rules, like the very, very fine points of the rules. Like, shouldn't it's kind of important that they're all on the same page here?
Yeah, well, I mean, that's why things get escalated. I mean, there are niche situations that individuals will need to like make judgment calls on. But I think that actually the far better example of this, honestly, is the undue delaying of Concord snafu that we had a few months ago, where suddenly it came down that was an exploit, and then everybody was freaking out because it's like, at what extent was it an exploit? Are people going to use this in order to trick other people into performing something that would get them banned? Like, it was just such a giant confusion, and then it ends up being like, oh nope, that isn't actually the interpretation at all, whatever. So you're
exactly
right. You're right. There has been definitely issues with that. I don't know how that gets solved. That seems almost like an institutional problem, because it's like, tech support have all the answers?
I feel like it needs to be a thing with
the
reimburse
Raiju is actually a really good one. Sorry.
yeah, like the reimburse Raiju. Like, I feel like there needs to be a thing where the CSM takes the initiative and says, I want to meet with this team. Right? If we have another debacle like the selling of a retriever, there should be a thing where the CSM should be able to go, we want to speak to the marketing team directly about this. Or if there's a game master problem, we want to specifically speak to Ice Cream and his team of game masters, right? Or there's a problem with the events, so let's grab Fozzie and his team of people, right? It shouldn't be a matter of the CCPers deciding whether or not they want to talk to the CSM. It should be the CSM deciding which teams at CCP they would wish to speak with.
How are you going to convince CCP that that's the way to go, though? Like, I mean, ultimately, they have the power. And
because what's the harm in trying? What's the harm in asking them to do that? What's the harm in saying, hey, can we try it this way? And if it doesn't work out, then we'll go back to the old way.
Do you think that that hasn't been asked for?
No clue because NDAs and how the current CSM people are and how they were in the past. I don't know if it's been tried.
That's fair. Let me ask you a kind of loaded question. So, obviously, you have a lot of energy, you have a lot of drive for the game, but you also kind of are a sort of goofy dude, and your positions are not necessarily traditional CSM positions, I guess. Like, I need to be at the table because of this. Why should people take you seriously?
Um, that's the weird thing because they shouldn't.
Well, okay, then how is voting
Hey,
for you not a waste? Like, are you asking people? Are you just a goofball candidate? Are you wasting
I
my
mean,
time?
no,
Okay.
not wasting your time. I hope I'm not wasting
Why
your
why
time.
should I take you
But
seriously?
I, uh, I don't. That is a loaded question. That's a
It
weird way to
I
say.
know.
But I'm not. I guess I should say I'm not a very professional kind of person, right? And that's both with Eve and with real life. You know, I treat my boss at work more like a friend than a boss, if you know what I mean. And that's just kind of the thing. That's my attitude. I am a very approachable person. I am a very face value person. I will say what I mean, and that may not come across as the most serious person because that's just not my personality. But I do have a lot of things within Eve that I want to tackle. And as far as taking me seriously, that's just the thing. It's very hard to determine when I'm joking and when I'm being completely serious because
Right.
it's kind of both at the same time all the time.
And that's why I was asking the question, is just to cut through that and like let you
Right.
kind of show
Uh,
off. Like,
I would say, as far as like why people should like seriously look at me as a candidate is just because of the some of the things that I have between my campaigning period, between the changes to the game, to the overall uh, arching idea that I bring to the table as far as actual EVE Online content goes, is why people should take me seriously. I guess that'll be a solid segue into what that is. And long story short, my favorite example is the ladder of progression. Um, uh, Best way to start it off is look at other MMOs like World of Warcraft. What do you see every year with World of Warcraft? You see a new expansion. You see the level cap
every
raised.
2 years,
You
but yes.
see there every 2 years. It used to be
Yeah.
every year. All right, in
Yeah.
between in
Either way.
between Lich King and Cataclysm was a year, but I haven't played WoW in a solid
Fair
five
enough.
years. Um, but that's the thing, right? They extend the ladder, whereas in years past with Eve, we don't see them extending the ladder or extending the ceiling. We see them extending that middle of the ladder, right? They've been making the mid game a lot longer and just kind of separating the ret vets from the new players drastically,
Are you
right?
advocating for power creep?
I am.
Okay.
I'm advocating for, one of the expressions I did on my CSM thread is Titans are only Tech 1. Titans are a Tech 1 ship. Can you believe that?
Yes.
How much how much higher can we go? Where's my Tech 2 Titans? Where's my ship above Titans? Where is my skill ceiling above getting everything to level 5?
Well, we've spent the
Where
last 2 years of pain because of how capitals got out of control. Is making bigger than capital really the answer?
I feel like it is a possible and viable solution. I feel like instead of making something like a Titan harder to get, I think should be something above a Titan. I think there should be things that players, that endgame players like us who have been playing for 5, 6 years and already have 2 or 3 Titans, that we should have something new to progress towards.
Yeah.
That that
Uh,
that that
I just wanted to
level
define this because
cap.
it's being asked. Power creep means that over time, design, in order to make new things feel good, they make it stronger than old things. So over time, the overall power begins to creep upwards, right? So having the concern with it would be that this doesn't fix the problem. It just moves the problem up the road, right? Now, Super Titans are the new Titans. Titans are the new Dreads. Dreads are the new, you get what I'm saying, are the new Marauders, and everything else is just bullshit, right? Like, does this actually fix the problem?
I feel like obviously there is that domino effect that you look at, and other MMOs are a great example of that. You know, if you were to make something larger than Titans, you know, Dreads would be the new Marauders, and I don't feel like that would be too much of an issue if it's addressed in the correct way. You look at Triglavian ships, right? The introduction of the Triglavian race, the Triglavian and the Edencom ships. Did they change the face of all the different faction ships? Did they?
Well, no, but I think that it's a perfect example of them like fleshing out the mid range, right? Because Triglavian ships are designed to be able to punch up.
Right. And so I believe there should be something new to be able to punch down while also having those mid-tier things that can punch up. Right? Because they've extended the mid game long enough. I'm not saying revert us back to 2019 of super capital proliferation. I'm saying now that you've made the mid game long enough, stop working on the mid game and start working on the end game. You know, we joke all the time that winning Eve is when you give all your shit away and quit. Right? Why is that the end game? Like, as much as that's a meme, why is that the end game?
Well, I think that the real statement there is that it's not over until that, right? Like,
exactly.
Like, that's the only way it ends. Otherwise, it's perpetual. That feels like a good thing.
But that's the thing. It is a good thing, but why are, you know what I mean? Why are Titans the end? You know, the average EVE Online player. So the average EVE Online player, like, in nullsec at least, gets at least one Titan after about 3-4 years of play, right? And
citation needed.
I don't know if I agree with that. Super capital proliferation.
Well, but I mean that's a sure, okay.
Right,
there's a lot of players that hit that point.
Yes, like talk to any sample of players, and the majority of nullsec block players get a Titan within 3 to 4 years of playing Eve, and that was with super capital proliferation. Right. So none of that's been changed after all these industry changes over the past 2 years, but still, it feels. I feel like those mid-tier players feel stuck. Right, along with new players. In my corporation, I am a mentor. I help a lot of our newbies. I help a lot of them transition between our high-sec corporation and moving down into nullsec. And some of the number one things they have is getting into those bigger, better ships. You know, by the time our high-sec newbies come on down to nullsec, they can normally fly an interceptor, a bomber, a harpy, a jackdaw, a ferox, whatever. Takes them roughly 3-4 months to get into hacks like the Munin, a couple more months to get in things like Marauders, you know, whatever. So the average the average new player that's sticking around and enjoying the game is stuck at that tier 2 sub-capital level for so long, and they can't, like, I have people that transitioned into our nullsec corp about 6 months ago that have fully trained into their dreads. They just can't afford it. They can't afford it, right? Because of the Isk problem that's been introduced over the past 2 years, and it feels weird to be stuck at that mid game. Like, imagine if you're playing WoW and you're just stuck in Wrath of the Lich King and you can't get to Cataclysm because some invisible wall of money, you know, and it makes players feel weird. It makes the gameplay feel weird. It doesn't feel rewarding to progress.
But is the problem the fact that people can't get to the end quickly? Or is the problem that the more, in a perpetual game, the more people that are at the end, the more they can oppress the people in the middle, right? Wouldn't it be like, I believe that the texture like, if you just if the goal is to get at the end and we get as many people to the end as possible, then that means that everything else doesn't matter. The thing I really like about EVE Online is that if you built an Armageddon in 2006, sure, it may be a little bit different than it was when you built it, but it's still fundamentally applicable to the universe as it is, right? Like rather than WoW-like expansions that just continually move forward this treadmill, we actually do get like more texture to the game, such that, like I said, if your older stuff isn't necessarily devalued. That's my concern.
No,
you would
and
make
that's
it so that the earlier steps don't matter.
If you do it right, then we won't have that problem, right? Because EVE, especially with PvP, it's always a trade-off, right? If someone has a Titan and they take it out to completely obliterate a sub-capital fleet, there are ways to combat that. That's why we have things like bombers that can kill a super capital in 130 seconds, right? With a sizable bomber fleet. But the super capital can't do anything about it because the bombers are too small, right? There are trade-offs to keep those ships as viable as they are.
But doesn't a super Titan undermine that, right? Like, I mean, obviously it's going to be stronger, so then it's going to be less capable for bombers to be able to counter it, right? Like, it's a Titan, it's harder to counter. It's just stronger. Like it reduces the value of those subcapitals.
It doesn't. That's the thing that we have with EVE now. That's why you don't see nullsec players taking out their super capital to rat anymore, because those tiny ships that barely cost 50 cents can murder you in an instant, and there's nothing you can do about it unless you bring an entire fleet of your friends with you. Right? And that's the trade-off. If we extend to the ceiling and we have T2 Titans, yes, it's going to be better than a Titan. Yes, it's going to be the best ship in the game, but a staple in EVE is that bigger doesn't always mean better.
By that logic, shouldn't the solution not be making something bigger, but instead working on that middle tier?
Well, that's the thing, though, because you want something bigger to attract players, right? Like, when you started EVE Online and you found out about capitals, what is almost every player's first thought? I want it. Even though now you look back and you say, oh, bigger isn't always better, right? I can kill an entire mutant fleet with a jackdaw fleet if I had sizable numbers and did the right shit. You know, I can go out there and I can kill a dread with marauders. I can go out there and kill a super capital with bombers. I could kill a titan with kikimoras, roracles with kikimoras, right? Now, as an experienced player, we know that there are ways to counter that, but a new player fresh looking in is going to say, ooh, big ship, I want, right?
So then what's the problem? All that sounds like things that are working right now.
Well, it doesn't work right now because they've extended that mid game too far. So it's not the dream. When I started EVE, and I was in Pro V block, and I saw Titan for the first time, I go, ooh, I want that. And now, because of how long that mid game is, dreaming of a Titan is far out of a mid player's grasp.
Right.
It does. There's no passion to want a Titan anymore because they're just so damn expensive. Because that mid game has been extending the mid game, fine, okay, but don't expand it to where a 4-year dream becomes a 10-year dream, because that's just too far. Right, and if you are going to do that, then you should make it easier to progress. A lot of people have been saying the Magic 14 needs to go away and become part of the NPE, and you get rewarded with those skills by doing the NPE for new players so that it can help new players catch up. Skill injectors were introduced to help new players get up. And now the mid game is so damn long, you either need to make it easier to transition from mid to late game, or you need to extend the late game so that everybody has a bit of that power creep.
Is it really a realistic way of looking at EVE Online to think about things in the terms of mid game and late game? Isn't it just game?
Yeah.
In a lot of ways?
In a lot of ways, it is.
Okay. So, what is the issue with there being a lot to do on a subcapital level? A lot of growth. Like, the thing is that it wasn't just I take a bunch of time to get into a Titan. It's that I get told I don't want to be in a Titan because bigger isn't better. And, I should enjoy, the stuff that I do get into, that I have more fun flying around in frigates than I do in battleships or capitals most of the time. I think that this idea that we should be putting Titans as this goal for everyone, that is the end. I don't think I like the idea of us having an end.
No, I agree, but you look at the newer players, right? Like, not necessarily first 2 or 3 weeks. You look at the players that have been playing for about 3-4 months, and they don't know that ideal of bigger isn't always better. One of the good examples I bring to this is new players in plexing, right? I see thousands and thousands of questions, especially on the Eve Reddit's no stupid questions thread. A lot of new players are going, oh, how can I get my alpha and constantly plex it every month so I don't have to pay for Omega? Is this possible? How do I do it? And it's like, it's just not a good idea for them for multiple reasons, right? But it's along that same ideal where new players come into the game and they look at the ship tree and they go all the way to the end of it. They see a Titan and they're like, ooh, that looks cool. I want that. And then they get told, oh, you can't get into that. Why not? Oh, because it's 250 billion fucking Isk, and me, a 6-year veteran, makes maybe a billion every couple days.
So the extension of the mid game from 3 years to 5 years or whatever it is that you said earlier, that's exclusively because of the cost of the ships. I mean, obviously, I don't think that they've changed what skill points it takes to get into them.
No, it's not the skill points. It's all the Isk progression, right? And obviously proliferation was an issue in on its own, and it needed to be solved. I'm not saying that proliferation needs to come back where Titans are 25 billion freaking Isk. I think is the lowest I've ever seen a Titan sold for on the Goonswarm S-Mart. But that was a fire sale. I think on average during 2019 they were going for about 40 bill for the hull, right? And while that was a problem in its own, it's also a problem to have them too expensive, right? It gets to a point where a new player says, oh, I have to save my Isk for 3 years just to buy one? And then they go, that's too much work, man. And then that dream of them progressing in the game just goes right out the fucking window.
I would like to believe that you can progress in the game without going further and further down the ship line, personally. But either way, I'm running low on my phase of time, and I did have a couple other questions that I wanted to ask, but I don't know if I can think of them right now. So I guess I'll just ask you, do you think that scarcity is over?
I like to say that scarcity is over in quotations, just because there's so I'll pull a little bit from Theta Thursday last week when we had Brisk on for his CSM interview, and he was talking about how things like ratting in nullsec aren't profitable anymore. And if you want to make profit, you got to go do abyssals. You got to do moon mining. You have to do reactions, whatever. I feel like the economy is in a state where there are certain activities that will make you billions, and there are other activities that will make you almost nothing. compared to the risk. I feel like the risk versus reward aspect of Isk generation within Eve is completely screwed over because of the post scarcity effect, right? I believe I heard it during Benjamin's interview talking about the ADMs and anomalies in systems and how people need to they need to rat to bring the ADMs up, but the DBS just makes the ISK sublime. Like it's under that level of being good.
Suboptimal, I think is the word.
Yeah, suboptimal is the word. But it's not good because at least in my ideal universe when I grew up on Eve, which I unfortunately did, that I have to say I was 15 when I started playing this game, and at 21, my teenage years, I grew up on Eve. The whole idea of Eve was that it didn't matter what activity you did. You didn't have to cherry pick your preferred ISK generation because they all made roughly the same, or they all made decent ISK compared to the risk that you were taking to do those activities, and the only choice you had was what activity you like to do. You know, the sand in the sandbox. And because of this post scarcity, I feel like that's not the case anymore. You have to cherry pick. This week the reaction prices are great, so I'm going to do reactions this week. Or, Jita market is lacking on 10 out of 10 DED sites, so let me do that because that's most profitable right now, right? Like, people have to cherry pick what activities they do within the game to make their money. And I don't like that. Eve has always been that sandbox aspect of picking what you enjoy to do. If people enjoy anomaly ratting, they should have the ability to do that, and the amount of ISK they make needs to match the amount of ISK they make needs to match the risk that they are taking by doing that. Right?
Is tier 5 and tier 6 Abyss risky?
No. A lot of people do abyssals in almost complete safety, and this is something we brought up on it was either Crosstalk Tuesday or Theta Thursday. I can't remember because I've been on a little bit of both this week, but somebody brought up the point that once you are in abyssal dead space, nobody can find you, right? Like it's just an instanced ratting thing, right? And yes, there is risk that you die due to rats, to player error, whatever, but there's a lot of people that once you kind of get the mechanic down, you're running it in relative safety. Right, and people used to camp the abyssal traces and gank you on your way out, but not a lot of people do that anymore. So many people are doing abyssals in almost complete safety.
Right. There is a glaring issue with the fact that Jita, now you can run Abyss in there, and it's very, very difficult to impossible for somebody to be able to
exactly
and for it.
And I don't personally run Abyssal, so if someone in the chat wants to help me out here, how much ISK per hour do you roughly make in a tier 6 Abyssal when running them for hours on end?
What, tier 6 is something like 200-300 million in a run, I think, so every 10-15 minutes. It's pretty good. It can be. But my point is that, like, I don't think I know of any comps that are considered to be risk-free in the, like, it is. The thing is that, like, the amount that you have to commit to the field and it's a pretty extreme risk.
As we say in nullsec, we say relative safely because obviously you're going to have that case. But people were making the same argument in 2019. People were whining that I could make 75 million ISK in 20 minutes in a super carrier doing a Haven, and I was relatively safe because of the super capital umbrella that a nullsec block had.
Right.
Well, Abyssal runners have the relative safety of not having anybody to deal with until they're outside of the Abyssal trace.
But are you really worried about the site just blapping the fuck out of you one day and like killing your super? No, you're not. Like my point is that are we truly respecting all of the kinds of risk? You know, if a super that's under a super umbrella, how much risk is it really under? A 5 billion Isk ship that's in a room or in a game where like 1% or more of the rooms will kill you unless you pilot them perfectly. Like, why is one risk valid but the other one not?
I think both risks are valid, but I throw that term out there relative safely. How many times do you see an Abyssal player not dying in or how I guess I should say the question, how many times do you see an Abyssal runner die to external factors that are not the Abyssal room or a bad RNG spawn or player error? How many Abyssal players do you see get killed because they were ganked, because they someone stole their loot? How many? You don't see that many, right? It takes people away from the scape of the game. It puts players in an isolated pocket rather than have that risk of being in tranquility, right? Like even high sec, as any player will know, high sec's not safe. You can get ganked in high sec. It is safer than other players, than other places, but you can still get ganked. Abyssals, they don't work like that. The second I pop my filament, I'm safe for the next 15 minutes unless I fuck up.
But why is the only risk that matters player risk? Risk from players.
Because that's what Eve's all about. Eve has always, in Isk generation, and Eve has always been about how much Isk am I making versus the risk of putting something for someone else to take away from me. Right?
Got it. So it's not about the risk of it being lost, it's the risk of being somebody else's victim.
Exactly. And that's the thing, and that's how Eve has been for the ages. High sec people in years past, they could mine their tritanium and have the risk of getting ganked by another player, having the loot stolen. If someone dies in the abyss, yes, that's a risk, but where does that Isk go? Where does that loot go that they made in that 15 minutes? It just gets thrown out there. It goes down into the sink. Right?
Yeah.
Which it doesn't hurt. It hurts the player that's running the abyss, obviously, but it also hurts the Eve market. You know, and I'm not super experienced in the market, so I'm not gonna go on a rant about that, but Isk generation and Eve has always been a risk versus reward concept, and a lot of that has been thrown out the window to effectively run anomalies in nullsec. I am fielding a 250 million Isk Ishtar or a 1.5 billion Isk Marauder, and you know how much Isk I'm making per 20 minutes? About 15 to 20.
Right.
Does that sound rewarding for the fact that any player could come into my system, any neutral could filament into my system or take a wormhole and come PvP with me?
But I mean, if I was doing it for the same cost, I'd have to be doing like level 3s, level 4s, which would be about the equivalent.
Right.
This is a fascinating conversation, and I think that we should probably have it again sometime. This is something that we should dig into. I feel like we kind of got a little bit off the trail when it comes to the actual CSM campaign.
But, that.
But I think it was good, though, because we wanted to explore, why you would function well as a candidate. And so digging through this stuff, challenging you to not only explain your like what you think is good and bad, but why, and argue them, I think is very valuable. And honestly, you held your own. I'll be completely honest with you. Brisk did explicitly give me instructions to be extra hard on you. So I wasn't easy, but I think that you at the very least, were a very high quality advocate for your position, and your position is one that is held by a lot of people. So to that end, I think that it's very clear, if you agree with what he's been saying, then he's a candidate for you. And that's the whole point here. So thank you for putting up with the battery of
You're good.
Almost insulting questions at times, but I do want to give you 10 minutes
back for that.
I do want to give you 10 minutes or time to go over anything that you feel like we may not have touched on.
So some of the other stuff that I've been advocating for this year is a little bit of NPE stuff. Very specifically, I've made it a point to say on a couple of the other interviews, the default EVE Online overview. And for anybody who's created a new character knows the pain of the General tab, the Mining tab, and the Warp 2 tab. It's garbage.
When CCP themselves are recommending, what is it, the ZTAC-S or whatever it is, the special overview?
ZTAC-S overview or the Rakapaskers for
just make it fucking default. No, I'm with you.
I feel like they need to fix that, right? And especially when CCP talks so much and so highly about the NPE and those first 2 or 3 hours within the game. And I've thankfully, and my friends hate me for it, I forced every one of my real life friends to sit down at my computer, create an EVE character, and play through the Air NPE.
And now you have no real life friends.
And the first question they asked me, the very first question they asked after getting out of the Air NPE, they looked at the overview, they pointed towards it, and they said, "What the fuck is this?"
Well,
and I go, that is a list. This is a spreadsheet list of everything in space.
Right.
And they're like, but there's so much in space. Is there no way to condense the list? Yeah, you can customize the overview. And it's something I've been talking about in the partnership Discord very much, is that even something as simple as an EVE Academy video telling new players how they can customize their overview and open up the overview settings and customize it, right? That they can do that and teach them how to do that,
I think it's a huge barrier to entry because, like, one of the things I've noticed is that new players resist using the overview. They'll hunt for them in space. They'll use every other mechanism.
Except for the overview because it's scary to them. Because it's scary to them.
Also, they're in
and
space. They need to they think I need to find the Stargate. It's there. Where is this planet?
I think the overview revamp would really help. Having not 3, but maybe the full 7 tabs, have a tab that shows structures, gates, ships, have your default general tab, right? Color code it, have an actual set color code, right? To the default overview, have your gates only tab so that traveling becomes easier for people to understand, have your mining tab, have friendly / corporation tab, have
what I want?
A solid default overview.
I want the highlighting to not be yellow.
Yes,
it is so fucking hard to tell the difference between the highlighted entry and every other entry.
I also think it should be for anyone who's ever played with the overview settings, if you choose to have a color alpha on the overview, for example, a lot of people put friendly structures as blue, right? Or friendly ships as blue. On your overview, each individual block of that ship or structure, the entire line is going to be blue, right?
Right.
And then you look in space, and the dot itself is a solid blue dot. And a lot of people seem to enjoy the stripe on the overview of the color, but they hate how it fully colors in the dot in the actual space, and you can't separate the two. If you turn off the filled dot in space, it turns off the stripe. And I feel like that needs to be interchangeable, that needs to be changed. I really think the overview in general, a simple rework of it for a default overview for new characters within the game will greatly help new players. It'll make it seem less intimidating. Color coding will help them understand what's in space in front of them and what's on the overview and how those correlate. It could be a really nice small quality of life change, right?
I agree. And the good news is that it seems like CCP has these things on the docket. They talked about it at FanFest.
Right.
Personally, if I can have multiple overviews active at a time, that's kind of like the biggest ask I've ever had. Like that alone could help fix so many of my problems. But yeah, so like this is definitely stuff that CCP is looking at working on. So to that end,
Right.
I think that your run from the CSM candidate, I know that I prodded this many times, but I think that you do have a very good case for why you have something to bring to bear to the table. Not only do you know a lot about a lot of different things, especially the things that CCP really needs to focus on right now, but let's be frank, CCP has a communication issue above all else. And so I've always said that, like, while we don't necessarily want to elect somebody just because of the fact that they're, a streamer or something like that, they have name recognition, you've put in work to that. You made the third, you actually create content, not just, participate in it, as it were. Right. So, and so you have a lot of information about messaging and about, how to make people into something. And Lord howdy, did CCP need you or someone like you to look through the FanFest keynote and be like, hey guys, where's the thing?
Yeah,
it would have been handy.
So during FanFest, during the stream, actually, in one of our Imperium Discords, someone was pinging out, talking about how the faction war vamp started happening, and the first response I had to that was, finally, they actually announced something new rather than spending an hour and a half talking about the changes that we already know they made.
Right.
Like,
yeah, I was definitely clock watching by that point. I was like, what? There's not enough time left.
Yeah, that's the thing I thought of too, because CCP Aurora comes on and I'm like, oh, 20 minutes left. Are we actually going to announce something new, or is it just going to be like the Diablo Immortal announcement where it's going to be like the last 2 minutes of the presentation?
Yeah, and although that being said, she killed it.
She did. I love it. So I also got to meet Aurora in Vegas last year, and I got to have dinner with her and ice cream, and she is hilarious, man. I love Aurora. She brings so many jokes to the table. It's great. It's hilarious.
Well, either way, I think that should just about do it. So thank you so much for coming and hanging out and chatting with us and being willing to run for the CSM and willing to be part of the CSM. It does take a lot of work. It is it's a civic duty, as it were, rather than like a prize to be won, in my opinion.
Exactly.
And to that end, I think that, you have a very good, you have a good cause to want to be on the CSM. And I think that you have a lot to offer. And even though you're not necessarily a major block candidate, chances are that a lot of people within that group will vote for you. So there is a chance to get a quote unquote non-block candidate, or sorry, a block supported candidate that may go after non-block issues, which is a good thing. But more importantly, I think that it's really good that you will continue to be on Theta Thursday, giving these opinions. I really like to hear the nuance that you were willing to add to what would be the standard goon rhetoric. I'd like to see that more out of the Imperium personally. But
I'll tell you one last thing. And this is kind of a little final point along what we were talking about earlier with Abyssals and Isk generation and whatnot. Making money in Eve with things like Abyssals and reactions and mining, that's fine and all, but the one question I want to linger with our audience today is,
I got a question if you want to leave on that one. I've got the one.
Okay,
I've
yeah.
got my last question. Ready?
Yeah.
Cat ears. Yes or no?
Absolutely.
There you go.
Absolutely, man. Give me my cat ears and give extra squishy as cat ears so I can drag him back into Eve.
I think this is the least surprising answer I've gotten so far. All right, you wanted to wrap this up.
So chat, I'm gonna ask you, for those of you that like to make money doing abyssals and doing your reactions, doing your industry, what about the players that don't enjoy those activities, huh? What about the players that like to quietly mine some Arcanor, or quietly mine some Bistot, or just casually run a couple drone hordes, run a couple stuff in Ishtars, right? Those people, they don't make enough Isk as they should, right? But they do those activities because they love those activities and they don't enjoy doing something like running through the Abyss. And having that choice of what activity that makes you happy is what's important. It shouldn't be a competition of, oh, X activity makes the most Isk. It should be, what activity in the game do I enjoy? What makes me smile?
Tell you what, I'll make you a deal. I will defend ratting as an occupation, just like I do missions, right? There are people that like missions, and therefore missions should be, I don't want missions to be changed so dramatically that those people that want their regularity can get it still, right? There should be something different for other people that want that more engaging thing. In the same end, if somebody wants to just rat, if somebody wants to just mine, they absolutely should be able to and feel rewarded for it. I'm willing to agree with that. If you're willing to agree that the Abyss is fucking challenging and the risk
challenging
doesn't come
its own way.
The risk does not have to always come from somebody ganking you.
I will respect that.
Excellent.
I'll respect that.
All right, we have come to consensus. But all right, well, thank you guys for watching. I think this has been a very productive conversation. For those of you on YouTube, please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe if you haven't. Leave any questions for Mifune. He will either come by and check it out, or I will bring it to his attention. Or you can go to the forums and I guess Theta Thursday and, wherever else, and let him know or talk to him to see whether or not he's the candidate for you, because it's the most important thing is that we gain as much knowledge and understanding as an electorate as possible, because an informed electorate makes an effective CSM, and an effective CSM is our tool for a better EVE Online. And that is the most important thing. That's what this is all about. So if you're watching this on the playlist, just go ahead and hang tight. It's just going to go on to the next one. But either way, on behalf of Mifune and myself, Ashtarothi, the voice of New Eden, thank you all for watching. And until next time, I'll see you in space.